We're on. Surly Talk Sports back in the saddle for another week. Shout out as always to the legends at the TAB, headline sponsor for this podcast, and we really appreciate their support. If you are having a flutter this weekend, make sure you download the app or head along to their website. As always, please gamble responsibly, but do so through our mates at the TAB. It's the home of sport and racing punting here in New Zealand. A bit of admin before we get into today's episode. Actually shot an episode of One Take earlier in the week with Curdy Cape. Well, if you haven't checked it out already and you're a big Warriors fan, I recommend you do. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, or wherever else you get your podcast. We talked all things joining the Warriors, how the move across the ditch came about, and how he's found his time at the club already. She's a grouse little 20-minute yarn, so sink your teeth into that. Speaking of new pods as well, tomorrow the first episode of the George Sport podcast goes down. Myself, Lee, Tammy, we're going to chew the fat on all things sports. Going to drop every Friday. Lots of banter, lots of sporting insights, some multi, some tips as well. It'll be the perfect way to wind down the working week as you start to lick the lips and get excited for the weekend's actions ahead. So stay tuned for that. Speaking of weekend's action, I'm actually dusting off the cobwebs. First preseason game for the Mighty Co in your grassroots rugby this weekend. We're taking on College Rifles. Should be a heck of a game. I saw they played last week, so they've already got one under the saddle, but she's 4 20-minute quarters. I'll be shooting for one or two of the best. Just a bit of TIS, chance to get a few nudges off the boot, see how they fly, and play yourself into some form. We've got another preseason game next week down in Hamilton. That'll be a bus trip, so can't wait to sink my teeth into some culture following that one. But I'll keep you posted on how I go in next week's pod, because I know a lot of you really love to hear about my sporting exploits. And speaking of sport, Tammy, myself, we actually got out onto the golf course there earlier in the week. 18 holes of the best. Shout out to Pupuki Golf Course and New Zealand Golf for hosting us. Fair to say, old Tammy, he's a bit of a hacker, but he had a couple nice shots in him as well. She was pissing down with rain, but any day out on the course, rain, hail or shine, she's Steve Devine. It's just good to be out there donating Titleist Pro V1s and sinking into a couple tins as well. So fingers crossed that's the first of many rounds with the great man Tammy Davis, and no doubt you'll be seeing a bit more content around that too. But without further ado, plenty of sporting chat to rip into, so let's get into it. Fair to say she was a tough week to tip a winner in the NRL. 2 from 6 for me. Would love to see how much cash the TAB made over the weekend with the underdogs saluting in the majority of those matchups. I think 6 out of 8 games the underdogs got up, which is pretty wild stuff. That's of course factoring in Vegas too. So round 1 was pure chaos. In terms of the big results, the Panthers, they made history, becoming the first team to be held to 0 points in round 1 after winning the comp the year before. What a defensive effort that was by the Melbourne Storm. And if you factor in the World Club Challenge, Penrith, they actually haven't scored a point in the last 120 minutes combined. So slightly worrying signs there for Ivan's lads. Also interesting, no team has ever gone on to win the comp after being held scoreless in round 1. So effectively, you can put a line through the Panthers. They are no longer going to win this year's premiership, which is great news for punters like myself. If you jumped on board the Wars to win the comp on those TAB future markets, $18 of the best, that is now a sure thing. How good. Speaking of the Warriors, unfortunately, we got tripped up at home, 16 points to 12 by the Sharkies, but that's all it was, ladies and gentlemen, just a good old-fashioned tripping up early on in the season, so no need to panic too much. The first 20 minutes, I thought we played the best footy out of all the teams in the competition, and my DMs were lighting up with excited fans saying we're going to go all the way, and we looked bloody hard to stop, to be fair. We were killing the Sharks through the middle, that ruck speed was through the roof, we were rolling, and then off the back of that, we were spreading the steed in perfectly and playing some great shape as well. We were ticking every box. The first try of the game went to Adam Fanua-Blake. He was running back what he did last year. Those Shakira hips, they still don't lie in 2024. Best footwork of any big fella going round the competition. And then Lukey Metcalf, he saluted for my Surly booster bet as well. Turned on a Met the Jet special, nothing doing, gets the ball, couple little jinx, and then just turns on the gas. Unreal stuff from him. A key moment for me though in this game, and unfortunately this is where our scoring stopped. It was around the 17-minute mark. Jackson Ford, he looked for all money to be going into dot down. One of the great one-on-one tackles by Will Kennedy pulled him up just short. Then a couple plays later, crossfield kick from SJ out to Dallin. In 2023, he would have scored that well and truly. He was taken out in the air though by Ronaldo Mulatalo. We get a penalty. Unfortunately, off the back of that, we can't cross the chalk. But you'd have to think if Jackson Ford or Dallin was able to dot down, then 18-0 after as many minutes, I think that would have been shut the gate. But credit to the Sharks. I thought their goal line defense throughout this game, and especially Nicho Hynes' goal line defense, not a noted defender, but geez, did he stand up. Unfortunately from there, the Warriors, we were held scoreless for the next 66 minutes. We had our chances, but we just couldn't execute, especially at the depth. Throughout this game, I had the feeling we were going to come back and steal it right on the hooter, but well done to the Sharkies. They hang tough. One of those games where before you know it, the 80-minute hooter's going, you look up at the scoreboard and you think, shit, how did we lose that? Because it certainly felt like we were the dominant team. Unfortunately, another key moment was, of course, losing Wade Egan, the CEO of Ruck Manipulation. We were 12-0 whenever he was on the paddock, and we were 16-0 to the opposition as soon as he went off. We just lose so much of our playmaking ability. His work around the ruck frees up SJ, and it just gives us that polished finish, especially in our red zone. He puts so many players into holes. You guys already know I'm a massive fan of Wade's playmaking ability. In terms of the standouts, I thought Tohu, Adden, and Tain Tuapiku were the MVPs for me in this one for the Warriors. And then for the Sharks, I thought Talakai was the pick of the bunch for him. Fair to say, I was pretty shocked when I saw the Dally M points from this game, and it really did get me thinking, is Tohu Harris the most underrated player going round in the competition? He played 80 minutes, so he didn't come off once, 238 run meters, 37 tackles. Both of those stats were game highs. He didn't get 1 point coming out of this in your Dally M rankings. That is pretty wild. I definitely thought that shift from the Mount Smart mummy deserved at least 1 point. Nicho Hynes walked away with 6, which certainly did surprise me. I actually thought SJ won the battles of the halves there. His kicking game was on point, and I thought Hot Boy Hynes was a bit quieter than usual. AFB got 3 points, probably should have got more than that. Talakai with 2 is fair enough, and then Tommy Hazelton with 1, an absolute bolter there. I think there were a few howlers throughout the weekend in terms of Dally M point allocations. I see Joey Manu got none in that Roosters game after that wizardry that he put in. So perhaps the judges need to take a good hard look at themselves. We can't have another Warrior being robbed like SJ was last year. So fingers crossed they've just got some of those round 1 jitters as well. In terms of the best and worst teams for me from round 1, I thought I'd do a bit of a stakes rising and stocks falling for you after the weekend's games. In terms of the 3 which stood out for me in the positive aspect, I thought Manly, rewinding back to Vegas, they were outstanding. Brooks, he's found his home. DCE, the conductor, pulling the strings. Turbo, Burbo and Gerbo, all the Travojevic brothers playing great footy. And I thought their pack shaped up really well as well. Historically, over the last couple years, Manly have been a bit light through the middle ever since they lost Fanua Blake. But blokes like Paseka, Josh Aloiai really stood up. And when you think they've still got Toff Sipley and Big Matty Lodge to come back, I think that board pack could do all right. Second, I had the Cowboys. Geez, did they put in probably the most polished performance of round 1. They're stacked on paper. They were a shock last year that they fell so far down the ladder. I tipped them to be a top 8 side this year, and they certainly looked like it on the weekend. Going great guns. Attack and defence both firing, and to put that many points on a Finn side that many people expected to be much improved, that was a great knock from them. And then in third, rounding out the podium in bronze, I had the Chooks. Another stack side that finally delivered. For so long, they've had the tag of slow starters, so to get a round 1 win will be a massive relief for them. They welcome back Dom Young this weekend too, so that team gets even better. And 2 of these sides are actually facing each other this weekend in Manly and the Chooks. Can't wait for that one, a real lip licker, and we'll touch on that soon. Then trending down, the teams which will be having a good hard look at themselves in the mirror, and fortunately for the Knights, they get a bye this week, so they'll get an extra 7 days to mull it over. But I thought they were the worst performing side of the weekend, purely because Off the back of last year, many people had them tipped as a top 8 team. They've still got largely a similar roster. They lost Dom Young and a couple others, but they recruited well as well. I thought they looked lost. I expected them at home in particular to pile on the points against the Canberra Milk. Ricky Stewart got his lads up for it, put on a masterclass in the coaching box, and they came away with the chocolates. But worrying signs for Knights fans, and I'm glad I had them sitting outside the top 8 in my pre-season predictions. In second, I had the Dolphins. Geez, they recruited well. A lot of experts had them playing playoff footy. For the record, I didn't, but I thought their defence in particular was pretty woeful. At Suncorp, plenty of local fans, bums on seats, ready to cheer their lads home, and I thought they shat the bed. I expected a bit more from a Wayne Bennett coach side in round 1, partly due to how good the Cowboys were, but overall I was disappointed with the Dolphins. And then in third, I had the Titans, and many people might push them higher up the list, but when you look at their outs, you factor in they were missing Jaden Campbell, son of Preston, David Fafita, and Kieran Foran. That's arguably 3 of their best players, alongside Big Tino, of course. They did lose by 24 points to the Dragons, but you could say it was semi-excusable, and there'll be a lot better of a side once they get all bums back on deck. Shout out to the Raiders and the Dragons, mentioned them both there, and I have to make a public apology after the first week because I had them both finishing down the bottom end of the ladder. And look, it's only early days, so they could still well slide down there. I don't want to overreact, but shit did they show up. The Dragons in particular. I thought they were outstanding. Zachy Lomax, the old low job, he said he doesn't want to be a winger, but man, that was arguably his best NRL performance so far. Thought Moses Sully was outstanding. Raymond Faitala Mariner. It's a bunch of players which, all due respect, a lot of clubs weren't exactly falling over their heels to get, so well done to them, punching well above their weight. Shane Flanagan clearly had them up for this one, and they could be a lot better of a side than many people, myself including, predicted. In terms of your other talking points to come out of that round, of course, the big news on the unfortunate side, Spencer Leniu, we've finally got his verdict. He will be out for 8 weeks due to that racial slur of Ezra Mam. I'm glad they came down hard on him. Hopefully this stamps it out from our game, because like I said last week, we have no room for racism in the greatest game of all. I do note the week he comes back, the Roosters are actually taking on the Broncos yet again, which to me can't be a coincidence. Surely the NRL factored that in. The build-up, the hype all week is going to be the Broncos lads. They'll want revenge on Leniu and try to get one back for Ezra Mam. So no doubt that'll get bums on seats, sell a lot of tickets, and the viewership will be huge. Maybe that's the tinfoil hatter in me, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Did they factor that in? I certainly think they did. The Roosters then take on the Warriors the week after. But overall, glad they came down hard on this, and hopefully now we can sweep it into the rug and move on, because this has just been a blight on the game. It's been all anyone's been talking about, but now we've got a result, so on we march. And speaking of on we march, we look forward to this weekend, and there's 3 games in particular that have really got me fired up. The first one we get treated to tonight, Thursday night footy. There's nothing better than kicking off the weekend. Look, you might have to stay up late over here in New Zealand. She's about midnight before you get to put the old head on the pillow and call it a day, but this one will be worth staying up for. Broncos taking on the Bunnies, 2 Vegas teams that are coming back fresh off losses, looking to get their first tick in the dub column. This is going to be a heck of a game, and one you certainly don't want to miss. Then the other games I highlighted, Penrith taking on Para at the foot of the mountain in Penrith. Interested to note, Parramatta paying $2.90. They've won 4 of their last 6 games against the Panthers. So to see that they were this much of the underdogs, they've also won the last 2 straight. That'll be an interesting game to watch, with many people starting to weigh in on Penrith like they always do. And to be fair to them, they lost the World Club Challenge and in round 1 last year, then went on to win the comp. So I'm sure internally they're certainly not rattled, but a lot of the armchair experts on Fox are starting to question whether this side still has what it takes with the loss of guys like Stephen Crichton and co. This should be a heck of a game though, 2 sides that have a genuine rivalry for each other, a battle of the West, so that's bums on seats for sure. Manly taking on the Chooks on your Sunday arvo. That's 2 big dogs in a Sunday special, nothing better than that. You might be slightly hungover, you park up on the couch and you get to watch some A-grade rugby Rugby League. Get that one into you. But your STS feature match for this weekend, and of course, I'm sure you all know what is coming. The Mighty Warriors, the One New Zealand Warriors, taking on the Melbourne Storm. 9:35 p.m. Saturday night. Win this one, and then she's straight to Danny Doolan's to celebrate. You couldn't ask for a better time slot. And Webby, he's rolled out the same 17 for the ambusher AAMI. That's what I'm calling this game. No one expects us to rock over to Melbourne and come away with the chockies, but that is exactly what we are going to do. And arguably, it is even more pleasing to see that Melbourne are still without Cam Munster and Nelson Asafa-Solomona. They are also unchanged from last week. Wade Egan, Curdy Capewell named. Fairly confident Capewell will be out there. I think Wade, he's more closer to that 50-50 type of margin. If so, if Wade is ruled out, then I think we have two genuine options here. We could either go Walker off the Rimu to play hooker. Freddie gets the start, walks in the 14. He comes on there. Then you could bring maybe Jazz into that 17 jersey. He was exceptional for New South Wales Cup last week. Put in a massive performance, and you could tell he was out to prove a point in that one. The second option, another one who went great guns in the Cup side last week, Chanel Harris-Tavita. Many fans have been calling for him to potentially play that utility role for the club this year. I did note as well, he played that last 20 minutes of last week's game at hooker, so that must have been instructions from Webby, or else why would you do it? He was great alongside Te Maire Martin in the halves for the majority of that game. Try assists galore. I think he got 4 from 4 kicks, even dotted down for a meaty, so I wouldn't mind seeing him come into the side as well. And interesting to note, again, Adam Pompey in the 18th man role, which means he's not listed to play for Cup. For me, it seems a bit weird carrying a centre there, but in Webby we trust, and we'll back him in all day long. So great to see some continuity. First up for our first 2 games in terms of squad selection, and Webby, he's giving these lads a shot at redemption. And speaking to Kurt Capewell, he said the boys can't wait to get out there and rip in on the weekend, avenge that loss against a team that we have a genuine rivalry with. So can't wait to see them go about their work. And Webby, he's given the lads the opportunity to do so I certainly rate that. In terms of your keys to victory, I think building on that 20 to 30 minute period that we saw last week and trying to turn that into at least a 50 to 60 minute slog could be massive for us this week. When you run your eye over the Storm side, especially on paper, and you got to factor in they were good enough to beat Penrith last week, but through the middle, geez, they look a bit short. So I think if we can dominate them through there, the ref controls the ruck speed better than they did against the Sharks. Because I have to say, how they were able to just lie on us and kill our momentum for so long through there was a bit of a joke. Another year, another bunch of refers, but fingers crossed that is not the case this weekend. I think if we're allowed to get that momentum that we can create through the middle, then that should allow us to get a nice roll on. If we can limit the errors and add a bit of a polish to our red zone attacking plays, another week at the back for Tane, that will certainly help his combination with SJ. Heard a few people pointing out this week, and rightly so, looked a bit more clunky without Chans at the back there. We're so used to just seeing Shawnee pull it back, no look, release ball out the back to Chans. He links with Dell, and in we go. A couple times, those Steadens, they were hitting the turf, but that's just time and saddle, or TIS, as I so often refer it to. And I thought Tane was exceptional at the back in the 1 jersey last week. Drop balls in general, I thought they killed us a couple times on the edge. Once we were starting to get into our shape, we just coughed up some unfortunate errors. So clean that out, a bit of a repeat shift of that first 20 minutes, and the ambush will be well and truly complete. Get up the Waz, I can sense a famous victory here, so make sure you're still riding with the boys. See a few couch critics coming out early doors off the back of round 1, but you best believe we're going to go over there and get the chocolates. Go get 'em, boys. Warriors 13+. The chaos continued into the Super Rugby. It was upsets galore in the 15-man code as well. In fact, it was the first time the Blues, the Crusaders and the Chiefs all lost on the same weekend since 2013, which is 11 years ago. In fact, it was the same exact weekend too, March the 8th until the 10th. So conspiracy theorists out there, you might be picking up a little trend, but that was pretty crazy scenes. And well done to a few of those underdog sides for pulling off those upsets, because I certainly didn't have them on my bet slips. The Crusaders, they have now lost 3 games on the bounce, the first time they've done so to start the season since 1996. They've never lost 4 in a row in their proud history. Interesting to note as well, they're taking on the Canes in Christchurch this weekend, then they're taking on the Blues at Eden Park, and the Chiefs back at home. Never lost 4 on the trot like I just mentioned. They've certainly never lost 6 on the bounce. They could be 0-6 in 3 weeks' time. It wouldn't be that unrealistic. Absolute scenes then, and no doubt the Christchurch locals, they're not used to losing, so that would certainly rattle them. They're sitting in 11th on the ladder, second to last, ahead of only the Force by points differential. It is truly crazy stuff. The other big results, the Canes, they got the win up against the Blues, and well done to them. As soon as I saw Geordie Barrett wasn't in this lineup, I put a line through them, but they showed on the weekend they got plenty more threats than just old Bitcoin. Their back 3 was outstanding. Ruben Love, Kini Naholo, and Josh Morby all putting up their hands for potentially higher honours. I thought Cam Roigard was exceptional again. His running game around the rucky is a true menace there. The Blues, unfortunately for them, they went with a 6-2 split on the bench, a bit of a Russie Erasmus-esque type of tactic there, and it certainly backfired in Plumtree's face. Unfortunately, they suffered early injuries to fullback Zahn Sullivan and AJ Lamb, which means the reserve halfback had to come into the back line, and they actually finished the game with the reserve lock on the sting, which is never great signs. Meanwhile, Caleb Clark, unfortunately, he was out for All Blacks rest up at Tara Iti playing golf. You'd have to think he would have loved to have been out there helping out the boys. Certainly not his fault. Again, really grinds my gears, this All Black rest. It's only round 3. They haven't got a game for a couple of months. All the troops should be out there playing. Extremely frustrating stuff, but shout out to the Canes. Again, showing they're the only undefeated team remaining in this competition. A genuine threat to take out the trophy, and they're certainly the team to beat at the moment. The Reds, they continue to be the Chiefs' bogey team. A massive win for them at home at Suncorp. They've won 2 out of their last 3 against the lads from the Waikato, and this was a great win for them. They actually play a really entertaining style of code, and they almost play a bit like another New Zealand team. They're not afraid to chuck the nut around and let the old Gilbert fly. They're physical at the breakdown. Fraser McWright, holy shit, what a 7 he is. Michael Hooper 2.0. In fact, with that headgear on, you could almost be excused for thinking he was Hoops himself. A real menace at ruck time, a genuine pilferer. So well done to him, and no doubt Joe Schmidt will be licking his lips at the prospect of working with him for the Wallabies. For the Chiefs, you'd have to think Coach Clayton McMillan, he might be ruining a couple of his decisions around selection as well. Anton Leonard-Brown off the back, Shooter onto the wing, a few changes in that back line and the forward pack. The team was operating so well. Again, they have to adhere to the powers that be and tick some boxes with some minutes and game time restriction, but this was a game they would have loved to have won, come back home, take on the Drua. That is when you could rest a few bodies, because the Drua on the road, they're certainly not the same force as they are back at home, but that's not to be. And now this week becomes an extremely crucial game for them. I still think they're the best team going around in the competition when they name their top 23, but a bit of a warning signal to them and to other teams that the Reds are here to play this year. Shout out to the Landers, the lads from the deep south. A great win for them too over the Waratahs, and a Tars side that would have been full of fizz off the back of putting the Crusaders to the sword over at Super Round the week before. The Dunners lads, they're going great guns. Reece Patchell, the old ginger Welsh first 5, continues to roll out the razzle, and in him, Fakatava and Sammy Gilbert, they have one of the great 9, 10, 12 combinations, and one I certainly didn't see coming. I noticed last year they rolled out Freddie Burns. They recruited him from the Northern Hemisphere. It didn't quite work out for them, but good on them. They rolled the dice again when after another experienced 10 from over those shores, and in Reece Patchell, they look like they've found a bloody good egg. And then, like I touched on before, the Drua, they pulled off the win at home against the Crusaders, and well done to them. The Crusaders, they were up 10-0. It's not often you see them lose a game like that. The Drua, they then held them out for the next 60 or so minutes. Shout out to Hiram Jeremiah Murray, who was great on debut on the Sting for the Crusaders, and the other winger, Sevu Reece. He was probably the highlight out of this game, and probably the most encouraging bit of news out of Crusaders camp for the first 3 weeks. Back from an ACL, been a while since he laced up, but it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Got a high work rate, and he's a menace around ruck time on attack, so good to see Sevu running amok, especially on his home soil. Looking ahead to this week, some huge games for the Kiwi sides as they look to bounce back and right a couple of wrongs from last weekend, get back into their winning ways. It doesn't get any bigger than tomorrow night. Crusaders taking on the Swirls. Interesting to see, at time of recording, the TAB can't split them. They're both paying $1.95 a piece. I found this a little surprising. Clearly, there's a big home crowd factor there in favour of the Crusaders, because I would have thought Hurricanes, form team in the comp, that they would be the out-and-out favourites. Outside of Sevu Reece, I do wonder if the Crusaders have the attacking arsenal to be able to slice and dice the Swirls open and trouble the scoreboard too much. I am recording this before teams are announced on your Wednesday arvo. Big rumours too that Scotty Dog-Roll Barrett will not be lacing up. If that is the case, and the Crusaders will be without their inspirational skipper, then I'll be getting on the Canes for sure. 1-12 probably. Still expect the home side to put up a good fight, but that never have been 0-4 record looks well and truly in trouble. Landers taking on the Brumbies on your Super Saturday. She's a quadruple header. You gotta love that. 4:35 kickoff from the Sistema lunchbox. Landers underdogs at home. Again, I was shocked to see this in front of a no-doubt packed zoo, and it's been really positive to see the home crowds turning out in massive numbers for the Landers. Great to see the students getting amongst it. Plenty of bums on seats, the face paint, lots of tins being deleted. You gotta love that. But I'll be snapping up the Landers. I thought the Brumbies looked pretty patchy last week against the Force, and in a way they were lucky to pull off that win. If this team can continue to surprise the Landers, play some razzle-dazzle under the roof, then I think they'll be too good. Chiefs Drua, like I mentioned before, I have a feeling the Chiefs will try and rest a couple of rigs this week, and it's a lot safer that the Drua are on the road. I still want them to put in a strong performance though and bounce back. You can't afford to lose 2 on the trot in this competition. They shouldn't be taking the Drua lightly, but I'll still back them in to get the dub. And then finally for New Zealand teams, we have the Tars taking on the Blues. 9:35 p.m. on your Super Saturday. It's fair to say most TV screens around NZ at this time slot will be fixated on the Wars. I'll be rocking the dual screen, but most of my attention will be going towards New Zealand's favourite team. But hey, the Blues, they'll be stinging from last week's outcome, and again, recorded before team naming, but massive question marks around Zahn Sullivan, AJ Lamb. I saw Mark Talia also went off late in that game too, so if those 3 are listed, then I really like their chances of beating the boys from Bondi. If not, then the home side, they will be full of themselves and thinking they could pull off one of the great upsets. They've had a tough little run to start the series, the Waratahs. Crusaders, Highlanders, Blues. Doesn't get much tougher than that, but fingers crossed the Blues will not lose. They can get back to their old ways. Also saw Enrico Ioane's story on Tuesday night. The lads, they're having a bit of a bonding sesh, Carver and whatnot, so fingers crossed they'll come in tight as a real unit and right the wrongs of last week. And then finally, a bit of news out of South Africa that I wanted to touch on too, that Rassie Erasmus could be up to his usual tricks, and he's come out and said he might be stripping Khaleesi of the captaincy of the national side. Which to me, if this is true, that is a crazy call. He's one of those blokes who would probably roll the dice and pull it off, and I certainly don't back that he would be afraid to make this move. But unless it's him future-proofing for future World Cups and he doesn't think Khaleesi has the legs in him to make it to the next one, then I'm totally against this call. For me, Khaleesi, he's one of those guys, he's so inspirational and powerful to both the team and the people of South Africa. He really does unite that nation whenever he speaks. I genuinely think he could run for president once his time playing is done, but I would hate to see this happen. He's one of my favourite players at international level, a born leader, and he's one of those guys that makes the Springboks a little more likeable. Of course, they're one of our biggest rivals in the game, so you can't help but have that little chip on your shoulder, a bit of edge whenever we come in to play the South Africans. But Khaleesi, such a good bloke and a heck of a player as well, that you almost didn't mind seeing him lift the William Webb Ellis Cup just because he's a great bloke. So this could be huge, a massive change in direction for South African rugby as well. So keep an eye on that. And speaking of change of direction, the final talking point, and this could be a big one for potentially the All Blacks and more so for French rugby. Latest news around Joey Manu, or the rumour mill around him anyway, is that he in fact now intends to stay at the Roosters and in the NRL, which would be a massive backflip on that news that we heard the other week. Of course, the rumours were big money, millions of dollars to head over to France to play in the 15-man game. Joey himself, he's always said that being an All Black was a dream of his as a child growing up. Have it on good word, Razor Robinson, who's actually in Japan at the moment, really wants to get that eligibility across the line so that New Zealand-based players playing overseas can wear the All Blacks jersey. Perhaps that's why he's in Japan right now, catching up with guys like Richie Mo'unga and co. That right there is pure speculation, but I do know Razor wants to make that eligibility change, and Joey Manu would then be able to become eligible to wear that silver fern on his left tit. But this would be a huge spanner in the works if he decides to stay at the Roosters. Of course, they are losing Joseph Suaalii. All the chat was that he was moving to rugby because Teddy would still be the fullback. But keep your eyes peeled, because I think that is far from a done deal. And Joey Manu may not be making the jump to rugby union after all. So stay tuned for that. Weekly wrap time now, and shout out to Joseph Parker, who got another famous victory. That's back-to-back big wins for him. First, Wilder picked him apart in 12 rounds, got the win by decision, and then this one, Big Bang Zhang, he picked him apart as well in much similar fashion and also got his hand raised. It was an interesting fight. Of course, Parker, he got dropped twice, and Zhang just showed his punching power. He's an incredibly large human. I believe he was over 20 kilos heavier than Joe as well, and Joe is no slouch. He's a big lad as well, so that just goes to show the size of the big man from China. Parker, he landed quite a few solid shots too, some hooks and jabs that landed right on his dome, but it appeared to unrattle the big man, almost like Homer Simpson in that Simpsons episode where he's boxing and he can just absorb all the shots, tire people out, and then knock them down himself. Zhang, he dropped Joe twice. Joe, to his credit, got back up both times. Looked like the second one broke his nose, but Parker is tough as shit. We all know that about him. He never says no to fighting anyone, and he never stays down on the canvas for long. So well done to Parker. Great to see post-fight too. People were asking around his intentions, what his plans are now. He said he just wanted to get back home and be a dad, so you gotta love that. Pulls the heartstrings as well. Interested to see Zhang, he had that rematch clause in his contract, so Parker now will have to fight him again. But to be honest, I can't see that being too much of a problem. I think Parker's camp would have learnt so much from that fight, and it's a bloody good camp as well with Andy Lee and co pulling the strings. But I expect that Parker will once again just pick and choose his shots, outbox him. He's got the better work ethic, the bigger tank, and can go the distance. And I don't think Zhang will be able to knock him out, because to be fair to him, he landed a couple of his best shots and that still wasn't enough. So another big payday for Parker. Would love to see him take on an Anthony Joshua or someone else similar in the next fights to come. Of course, he's now the interim WBO heavyweight champion. He's got a belt once again. What a comeback story for Joe over the last couple years. Looks a completely different fighter, and well done to him. And speaking of Anthony Joshua, geez, what a knockout that was. Arguably the most brutal KO that I have certainly ever witnessed, particularly in a boxing ring. That was wild. I wasn't sure Ngannou could be knocked out like that. Of course, Francis's last fight, he was the one dropping Tyson Fury, who's regarded as one of the toughest guys in boxing to drop. So I was giving him big chances. I was talking him up. Maybe he could go the distance. But Joshua, he made light work of him in the second round. Knocked him down in the first and then completely slept him in the second. Ngannou, he actually buckled over himself. His knees folded backwards. It was pretty scary scenes, to be fair. And they literally had the oxygen tank out pumping oxygen into him post-brain cell depletion. It was great to see him get back up, walk it off. He did look pretty dazed, unsure what had just happened, but it was great to see him get out of the ring on his own will. Joshua, again, proving to the critics that he is a bloody good boxer. So many times people write him off, say he's not the real deal, doesn't have that knockout power of the other big threats in the division, but he showed he does there. A massive win for him. Interesting to see what Ngannou does now. You'd have to think back to MMA and potentially back to the UFC, where no doubt Dana White, he was watching that fight on the weekend and licking his lips, rubbing his hands, knowing that he could get back one of the biggest names in the sport. So keep an eye out for that. Interesting to see who Joshua fights next. I think he wants the winner of Fury versus Usyk, and that would be a bloody good fight too. Shout out to the Black Caps, who gave it a good run. Unfortunately, they didn't come away with the dub against our Australian rivals, but they gave it a good old-fashioned knock, fell a couple of wickets short. Shout out to B. Sears as well. Benny Sears, I love this. If you add an L and an E into his last name, it's effectively me, Ben Searle. The coincidence is uncanny, and he looks every bit another Neil Wagner type of bowler. On test debut, he just came steaming in non-stop, screaming into the crease. Bounces, speed balls, he's a bit quicker than Wagner, up around that 145 clip. And the Black Caps, they certainly made this one an interesting watch. After the first innings, I thought we were no chance. Our bowling attack got about their work. Turns out it was a tougher pitch than what we imagined early doors to bat on. So this is probably the more interesting out of all the games against Australia. Unfortunately, it still ended up in a Test series sweep, and a sweep of the whole series if you factor in the T20s as well. I saw coach Gary Stead come out and say he doesn't think there's anything psychological in his team's head whenever they take on Australia. Me personally, I've got to wonder though. Seems like we always come in to series against them in some pretty sharp form, and we can never quite deliver and get one up over our mates across the ditch. So tough scenes there for Black Caps fans. Still a couple of positives, but in the end it results in a clean sweep, a good old-fashioned brooming. So hopefully the lads can bounce back there. Apart from that though, in terms of your soccer, the Phoenix still going good guns. Big game for them this week, so hopefully they can salute. NFL, there's been lots going on there in the free agency market. Interesting to see Saquon Barkley join Philly. She's been a lot of movement for your running backs. Also, Derrick Henry, King Henry, joins the Baltimore Ravens, who by every means look to be forming their Avengers there on offense. Their defense, they're losing a couple of big names, but it looks like they're going to be able to score plenty of points. So it's movement galore in the NFL. It's been hard to catch up with almost, and a lot of teams are going to look very different next year. Then over to your NBA, Boston Nuggets, those type of teams still flexing their muscles. The T-Wolves going great guns as well. Good to see the Lakers getting themselves back into the winner's circle a bit more. We're about 3/4 of the way through the season now, so this is where things really start to heat up. Lots of jockeying for position, teams trying to get themselves into the play-in, so it should get spicy over the next month or so, and fingers crossed the Lake Show can stay healthy. When they have everyone out on the court, they look bloody good. Bet the T-Wolves the other day, albeit without a lot of their key players, Rudy, Cat and co. But shout out to NZ Warriors faithful. I know he's a big T-Wolves fan. I'm a Lakers fan, so a famous result for us there. How good. Time to scratch your punting itch, of course, brought to you by the legends at the TAB. They're the headline sponsor of this podcast. If you're not already a TAB customer, make sure you download the app, head along to their website, www.tab.co.nz. I'm going to give you a few of my best bets for this weekend, but there's promos, power plays, boosted options galore, so jump on their website, head to the Punters Lounge to find everything that is available for you through the best betting agency here in New Zealand. In terms of your NRL, of course, Broncos, Bunnies tonight. Some interesting stats for you here. The Broncos, they've won 3 of their last 4 games against the Rabbitohs, but interestingly, the Rabbitohs, they've won their last 4 straight games at Suncorp. Katoni Staggs, he scored 6 tries in his last 7 games against the Bunnies, and Cobbo, he scored 20 tries in his last 18 at home. So factor those 2 in. My best bet for this one, I'm going Broncos head to head and Staggs to score. There's also a boosted option which caught my eye Anyway, I'm a sucker for a boost. AJ and Cobbo, both to score. Stats suggest that is a shoo-in. $6 are the best. That is pretty juicy stuff. Sharks, they're taking on the Doggies. Expect the Sharks to make it 2 on the bounce and be too strong for the lads from Belmore. Do feel a little sorry for the Dogs. Looks like Joshy Addo-Carr's going to be ruled out for a while. They made a lot of off-season recruits, but it doesn't look like, early doors anyway, that they're going to make a massive leap this year. The Sharks, they've won 11 of their last 13 against the Dogs, and the Dogs, they haven't won at Shark Park since 2011. 13 years, what a hoodoo that is. Ronaldo Mulatalo, of course, scored last week, and he scored 27 tries in his last 25 at home. So Sharks into Ronaldo here for me. Penrith versus Para, that's a real Daryl Tuffy, almost a coin toss. Penrith $1.39, Parramatta $2.90. The Panthers, they've won 10 of their last 11 at home, but the Eels have won 4 of their last 6 and the last 2 straight against the defending premiers. Penrith, they haven't lost 2 on the trot to start a season since 2016, but for me, Para, they've got the wood on them. They looked the better side last week, so I think they're in with a genuine chance. The point start surprised me. It's plus 7.5, which I think is a great bet in favour of Para. That's $1.90. Parramatta 1 to 12 is at $3.75, and that is jam too. There's a boost as well. To'o and Gutho both to score. Gutho, he scored 5 tries in his last 6 against Ivan Cleary's lads, so factor that in. $8. Pretty healthy payday there. Raiders versus Tigers, who really cares, but we'll be jumping on the Raiders head to head. Cowboys versus Knights, Cows all day there at $1.43, and Kyle Felt, he needs one more try to tie Matty Bowen at the top of the try scoring records for the Cowboys, so tip him in. Storm versus Warriors, this is one we'll take a bit more of a deep dive into. Storm $1.40, Warriors $2.85. That's crazy stuff. TAB need to be sent for an HIA check in my humble opinion. And don't get me wrong, the stats aren't great, so perhaps that's what they've factored these odds off the Storm. They've won their last 14 straight against us, and we haven't won at AAMI Park since 2014. But all that goes out the door because it's the ambush at AAMI Park this week, and we're going to go get the Chockies. A 7.5 point start, much like that Para game. You're crazy if you don't take that. Head-to-head is also a great bet, and then 1 to 12 at $4 is an absolute steal. The Surly boost for this week, it also comes via the way of the Warriors, and that is the Warriors to win and Marcelo Montoya to score, paying $6.50. I think him and Roger, they're going to tear Smith and William Warbrick apart on that edge. It was $5.50. Sprinkled a bit of Surly sauce on it, boosted her up $1, and I think that is a great bet. Montoya the Destroyer, hopefully he can cross, and shout out to you J-Dog mate, no doubt you'll be right in the Storm, but the Wars will get this one all day. Manly versus Chooks, Manly paying $2.15 at home, Chooks $1.67. The Roosters, they've won 3 of their last 4 games in Manly. Tommy Turbo, he scored 6 tries in his last 6 against the Roosters as well. I'm actually going to tip in Manly here. I think at home in front of a packed out Brookvale on a Sunday arvo. That's stuff that Manly is built off as a club. So I'll go them and Tommy Turbo to score. A bit of a boil over at Brookvale, so some value there. And then finally, Finns, they take on the Dragons, and despite being down on troops, I'm thinking I'm going to take the underdog Redcliffe side at home. They're playing at KO Stadium. I think the locals will get out in a major way. They're paying $1.92, which I think is good value there. And I also think the Hammer scores after a pretty mixed performance from him last week. It's pretty rare he goes 2 games on the trot without saluting, so pencil that one in. In terms of your multis, your oval ball mega multi-buster for this one, remember, same promo as always. It applies to your Super Rugby as well. If you place a 4+ leg multi, it misses by 1, you get your money back up to $50 as a bonus bet. 6+ it can miss by 2, 8+ it can miss by 3. I've gone Broncos, Sharks, Raiders, Cows, and Wars. 5+ legs, that returns $10.76. Help yourself there for your NRL punting. Super Rugby, oval ball, mega multi-buster. Like I said, we roll it into this one. I'm going the Canes head-to-head over the Crusaders at $1.95. I like the Landers over the Brumbies, $2.05. I like the Chiefs over the Drua and the Blues over the Tars, That doesn't seem that unrealistic. $5.37 plus you get that bonus back insurance if it does shit the bed. Surely the New Zealand sides get up this weekend. That is certainly what I'm hoping for. In terms of your bet of the week, I went 4 from 6 on these now. Last week I had the Warriors into Para. Unfortunately, we lost. Parramatta won. You could give yourself a half mark, but I don't roll like that. I go in full doses. This week, I've gone a double line duo. I'm going to gobble these up. Warriors plus 7.5, into the Landers plus 7.5. 2 underdogs that I think will win, but I'm trying to be safer here, and that pays $2.80. Not bad. And then for your Magic Multi, this of course is where we get a bit Ivan Leary, but I'm taking a trip to Upset City this week. I'm going the Landers, the Eels, and the Wars, 3 genuine threats as underdogs. That's paying $16.94. How good is that? So there's a couple options for you if you're having a cheeky little flutter this weekend. As always, please gamble responsibly. She's 18 plus, and good luck on the Carmichael punt. If you're tipping some winners, feel free to fire me through your bet slips as well. Always love seeing green ticks on slips from the old STS community. Battler of the Week, brought to you by Better Beer, the best beer in all of the land. It's even in the name that it's better than other beers. 0 carbs, a great day session beer, and it pairs perfectly with a game of sport. So get into your local and grab yourself a box or 2 of Better Beers and shout out a game to them. This week, the prestigious award goes to the one and only Cam Munster. If you missed the news, the Melbourne Storm, Queensland and Kangaroos star slipped over when hopping out of the shower post-training at Melbourne HQ and actually injured his groin when doing so. It's so bad too, he doesn't know when he'll be back. He said at the moment he's struggling to even do any work in the gym, so he's certainly done a number on himself. He's an elite athlete, one of the top 10 players in the game, playing one of the toughest sports in the world. The fact he got bested by a bath mat, that is the ultimate battler type of injury. You can't be rolling around with a nickname like Mad Dog and get injured hopping out of the shower. Would have loved to have seen Craig Bellamy's reaction when he found out the news as well. No doubt he was absolutely filthy, but it does mean he misses the game this week against the Warriors, so we're grateful for that. But fingers crossed the Mad Dog, he can be back out on the paddock ripping and tearing soon. That'll be a tough one to beat for 2024, to be honest. A real candidate for Battler of the Year, but shout out to your Mad Dog Munster. You're this week's Better Beer Battler of the Week. Hopefully you enjoy a few tins yourself, because I know you love tucking into a couple cold Darren Frothiers. And again, shout out to Better Beer. Make sure you grab yourself a box. She comes in the bottles or the cans, so whatever's your tin of choice, they've got you covered. She's always a day for it with Better Beer. So that's episode 7 done and dusted. Fingers crossed she goes a bit more textbook with your sporting results this weekend. The Wars, the Blues, the Chiefs, they can all get back into that winner's circle, and hopefully we get some history as well. I'm sure Crusaders fans will disagree with me, but as a fan of rugby in general, I wouldn't mind them seeing going 0-4, be absolute scenes, and something a little different for your Super Rugby this year. But so much to sink your teeth into this weekend. Again, shout out to the TAB. Really appreciate their support, and good luck if you are having a flutter this weekend. There's a bit of value, a couple underdogs that I think could get up, and remember to jump on that Surly boost as well. Warriors to win, Montoya the Destroyer to dot down for a meaty. Say Lessie Ray Arcee. I'll catch you back here next week.